Good morning to everyone, and also maybe good evening or good night to everyone across the world. Thank you for joining the second day of the Digital Mental Health International Conference 2026. So after Professor Billingshurst's fantastic talk, kind of you understand my feelings now, my emotions now, right? I'm very excited and because I just met some participants, on-site participants from travel from Brazil, Colombia. Well, well, I think travel maybe over 30 hours to Hong Kong. Thank you so much. And it's my great pleasure to introduce our next keynote speaker, Professor Ambir Gajoli. Professor Gajoli is a full professor at the Catholic University of Sacred Heart in Milan, Italy. At there, where he directs the research center in communication psychology and the international master in user experience psychology. Yeah, yeah. The first time I read Professor Gajoli works is almost over a decade ago. Yeah, because he is an expert in positive technology. He inspired me to develop the first cyberpsychology undergraduate program courses in Hong Kong. Wow, it's amazing. And so he is a leading scholar in the field of positive technology, which explores how digital technologies can enhance personal experience and promote psychological growth. His research also emphasized on the use of immersive media and generative AI to support mental health and well-being. And about 3 years ago, we organized an international conference on positive technology. And wow, so grateful that at that time I could invite Professor Gajoli as one of our keynote speakers. But at that time, because it's still during the COVID, kind of he presented online. Yeah. And then afterwards, I decided to invite him to be the visiting professor for our School of Arts and Humanities at Donghua College. And I think you came about a year ago, December. And then so grateful that he is here again to share his wisdom and expert with us. And his title for his keynote lecture today is User Experience Design for Cyber Psychology and Digital Wellbeing Applications. Now is your show time. So let's give some big hands to Professor Gajoli. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Alex Chan. Thank you for this invitation. I'm honored to be here today. And I would like also to thank Professor Sally Chan for the kind hospitality and the audience for your attention. So this is some pictures from my research center. My research center, research center in communication psychology, is part of Catholic University, which is one of the largest Catholic university in the world and the largest in Europe, with over 40,000 students and 4 campuses only in Italy. The research center has several facilities for VR research, psychophysiological equipment, and so on. And we focus on different lines of research that were summarized by Professor Chan. So I'm not going to explain in details what we do in the lab. And the focus of my research, as Professor Chan mentioned, is positive technology. This was the main focus of my PhD research 20 years ago. Time goes by, unfortunately. And it is still one of my main line of research. Over the years, we have published several books about this topic. Unfortunately, I'm not going to present this topic today because it was the topic of my presentation in December 2025. So I don't want to bore this audience again with the same presentation. So in agreement with Professor Chan, we decided today to change slightly the topic. And this is a very important topic for me. pardon me if my presentation probably is going to be more boring than Professor Billinger's presentation, because I'm not showing many projects and many results, but I would like to share a reflection that is very heartfelt. A reflection about user adoption, about user engagement in this kind of project that we have seen in the last 2 days. So over the past 25 years, I've been involved in several projects about virtual reality, digital mental health, artificial intelligence applied to mental health, and so on. And I have coordinated many of those projects. And, you know, for a long time, I've been following, as you, the classic research and development approach, linear approach. We formulate a scientific hypothesis, we build the technology, we test it. We test it possibly in controlled settings. And we make nice presentations at conferences, nice papers. And then we ask for new grants and the wheel starts again. However, about 10 years ago, I started experiencing a growing sense of frustration. I began to notice a persistent gap. We are producing excellent research outcomes with nice impact factor, no doubt, but it was incredibly difficult then to translate the research results, the research products of our research projects into real-world applications that people could really use and benefit from their daily lives. And this led me to look a bit closer and ask myself, what is the weak link in this chain? And the answer that I found, probably there are different answers, but the answer that I found was design. So I realized that clinical efficacy means a lot, but means very little if technology suffers, for example, from poor usability or fails to engage the user. The topic of my talk will be about differentiating the concept of usability from engagement, from usability to user experience. Sometimes those two terms are used as synonyms, but they are not. And so since then, I have shifted my perspective. I have dedicated my work to understanding how to bridge this gap and integrate a stronger user experience and human-centered design approach in my research. And so I had to build capabilities for that. I had to build skills for that and competences. And the competences that we built, now we have translated into also training and education. And in fact, together with the Politecnico of Milano, the design school, which is a very prominent school worldwide known, we have created the first international master in user experience psychology that integrates the skills of design with the skills of psychology. It's a very successful program, so with students coming from all over the world, and companies are really eager to have our students because you know, integrating psychology and design means to design technology with an awareness and the knowledge of user needs and expectations. And how also to test and evaluate products is also part of this body of knowledge. So this is just an example of a project that I used to make 10 years ago. This is an interstress project that was funded by the European Commission. Nice money, big grant. We have almost 60 researchers working on this project, 4 countries in Europe. And I was leading this project. I was the coordinator. So the goal of this project was to create inter-reality technologies for assessing and monitoring psychological stress. So the idea was to have virtual reality, portable device, wearable technologies, all cooperating together in a kind of ecosystem to help monitoring and manage stress. So basically what we did was to create virtual environments that simulated the stressful situations and expose participants to those stressful situations in order to teach them emotional coping skills. A very classic cognitive behavioral therapy based project. Maybe the originality of this project was that we designed the virtual environment according to the feedback that we had from participants in real life. This is why we call this project Inter-Reality, because we designed virtual environments according to the situations, real life situations that people consider stressful. And how did we identify those situations? Well, we monitor stress using a portable device in everyday life. And then we analyze the context and we interview participants. And through focus groups and interviews, we were able to create these scenarios. And then we identified some prototypical scenarios. We recreated those scenarios, we simulated those scenarios, and those scenarios, of course, were more, let's say, customized and personalized to the specific characteristics of the patient. And we also provided, mobile-based exercise like mobile biofeedback to help participants also take this relaxation training exercise in their daily lives. We had a very rigorous evaluation of this project. We tested in 2 different populations with 3 arms trial, so wait list, no therapy, conventional therapy, and conventional CBT therapy augmented with the interstress approach. And we found that both treatments, so CBT and interstress, were able to significantly reduce perceived stress compared to the wait list. And the participants who received interstress, they reported a significant reduction in chronic trait anxiety and a greater increase in the interstress group in the emotional support than conventional CBT. But I don't want you to focus on this project because I think this is just an example that I want to make to show that what I consider a flagship project in my research, a very nice project from a research viewpoint, was a total failure in terms of following adoption. So the products that we developed, the mobile applications, the virtual environments, were no longer used after the project. Why? Because they were, lab prototypes. So we had the European Commission investing like 3 million euros in this project. And we had a lot of papers, exploitation plans, and so on. But then in the end, we did what we promised, we delivered. But then no one was using this application after the project. Of course, then you could say, this is not the goal of a research project. A research development project has to innovate. But if we keep innovating without, keeping an eye on the real needs of patients and clinicians and users, we create an increasing gap between us as academics and real life. And I know that this is not the first time you hear this type of reflection, but for me, it's a very important point because it was a case of great research, in my opinion, also nice clinical outcomes, but the real challenge arises when these technologies leave the lab and meet the real world. And meeting the real world is more urgent today than even before. We have a look at this challenge that we are facing. Professor Mack yesterday reminded us that today over 1 billion people worldwide is living with a mental disorder. And this is almost doubled compared to 1990. Of course, part of this increase, sorry, I have to look of my, Part of this increase is reflecting population growth, better diagnostic capacity, better epidemiological monitoring, probably greater public awareness, but there is no doubt that the global burden of disorder is rising. And 12 billion productive work days are lost every year to depression and anxiety alone at a cost of $1 trillion US. It's an immense amount of suffering and also an immense economic burden. So, of course, if mental health is becoming a systemic challenge, our response must also become systemic. We need more research, more prevention, more scalable services. Professor Fong pointed out that we also need new models of care, new models of primary care, integrating these tools. And of course, digital mental interventions can play a role. They are often presented as one of the most promising responses to a growing demand for psychological support. They can improve access to psychotherapeutic care, especially in regions with limited services, and they allow us to intervene earlier and a low threshold before crises escalate and become chronic. So avoiding to put a permanent strain on the system. There are different solutions that we can develop, and we have seen in those 2 days that there are different categories of these tools. I know that it's not easy to organize the field of digital mental health because it's not single intervention. Here is just a rough taxonomy. So at the most basic level, we have a remote therapist contact, video calls, phone calls. This is the closest digital equivalent to traditional clinical care. Why? Because it preserves the human relationship between a patient and professional. Then we have a web-based peer support. In this case, people share experience in online communities, and these spaces are good because they reduce isolation and provide support, but sometimes moderation and quality control remains a challenge. A third category is web-based computer therapy programs, digital CBT, psychoeducation, mobile apps. We have seen many examples in the previous presentations. They support daily monitoring, reminders, mood tracking, therapeutic exercises, and so on. And of course, virtual augmented reality, which has been the focus of my research in this area. They offer a more experiential form of intervention. They offer exposure therapy, rehabilitation. They are used in pain management, also in training. But the field is also expanding to other technologies. So, for example, we have seen examples about social robotics interventions. They are embodied social interactive agents. They can provide companionship, emotional engagement. In yesterday's presentation by Professor Barresi, we have seen the importance of neuroergonomics when it deals with using robotics systems. Another trend that we are exploring with Professor Barresi is phygital health. In this concept, the focus, according to our analysis, shifts from single digital tools to hybrid ecosystems. The idea is that physical space merge with digital tools. So we have to think more about an ecosystem than single interventions combined. So the system is more than the sum of the single components. And so the key idea is that digital mental health is evolving from isolated technologies toward more embodied and hybrid care digital ecosystems. And accordingly, in these systems, the patient's experience, the environment, and the interaction, they become part of the intervention. So because of this hybridization of technology, because of this hybridization between real and digital, we have to think more about holistic experience than a single intervention-based experience. And however, the promise should not be just more technology. The promise is a wider adoption and use. And in my opinion, this leads to one of the central challenges, what I call the engagement paradox. On the one hand, we have seen that scientific evidence is growing rapidly. We have now hundreds of studies showing that these apps, this intervention, they work well, they provide meaningful clinical benefits. But on the other hand, when we look at what happens outside controlled trials, we have a different picture. This is a study that has been reported also in other presentations, a quite prominent study by Baumel and colleagues. They analyzed the real-world usage data from 93 popular mental health apps. Each app had more than 10,000 installations, 10,000. And what is important in this study? The participants were not research participants receiving support from clinicians or researchers, they were ordinary users. And the results, as you can see, are quite impressive. After just 15 days, the median retention rate was only 4%. And after 30 days, it dropped to 3%. So in practical terms, this means that roughly 96 to 97% of users stopped using the app within a month. And you can see the pattern in the graph on the right. Regardless of the type of intervention, we had this decline. Oh, sorry, you want to take a picture? So I would like now to show you a short video that captures the engagement paradox, in my opinion, very well. I didn't make this video. This video has been developed by Superflux. The title of the video is Uninvited Guest. It's 4 minutes. And the main character is Thomas. He's a 70-year-old man who lives alone after the death of his wife. And his children, they sent him a series of smart devices to monitor his diet, sleep patterns, his healthcare from different viewpoints. And the reason why I chose this video and not one of the videos of my projects is that I would like you to empathize with the main character of the video and to make this exercise to try to feel what Thomas is feeling. Because I think this kind of exercise should be done every time we design something from someone else.
Another shipping forecast issued by the Met Office at 22:43 on Saturday the 18th. There are warnings of gales in all areas except Trafalgar. The general synopsis at 1800, Iceland 960, drifting slowly east and filling. Low 250 miles northeast of the Faroes 9540 by 1800 Sunday. High Trafalgar 1033, slow moving with little change. The area forecast for the next 24 hours, Viking north and south Utsira 40.
Is it Chinese? Is it Japanese? James thinks it's Chinese.
This little vase is Japanese, and there are several things that we look at. If we first look at the little band that encircles the neck.
Seriously, you know, I've never heard.
We say 150 pounds, 150. Area pounds and 50. Area pounds and 50. 80, 90 pounds. Area pounds and 90 pounds. All done at
29% swing.
We are seeing the entire shape of British politics changing before our eyes.
Look at that. It is right up. It's almost breaking our swingometer.
horrifying column that for the Lib Dems, down 27%.
Viking, northwest 5 or 6. Wintry showers, good, occasionally poor. North at Sierra, south at Sierra, east 40s. Variable 4, becoming southeasterly 5 or 6. West 40s, Cromarty, Forth, Tyne, West Dogger.
Noel Wiley, no red line for you as your high score. But let's see, Noel Wiley. Is it right? How many people?
Surveying the captive all on here, 254.
No. I think you probably will. I mean, it comes down. I tell you what, you've got several years of Sundays.
Okay.
I can hardly recommend.
Do the pointless thing of making up names. And that stacks the odds against me.
Yeah, I'm thinking Brown's
now in winter. The sharks are focusing all their attention on the offshore islands, full of young seals. By watching how the sharks hunt here, Alison has learned what time of day an attack is most likely.
Here's the general synopsis at 0700 GMT. Cow in sea area Shannon, moving slowly eastwards and filling.
Genius.
Sorry, that should be low in sea area Shannon. And now the area reports. Viking, north of Sierra, south of Sierra, rain at times, good. Westerly becoming cyclonic, good. Humber, Thames, Bedford, Leyland, Daff, Dover, Seoul, Hayt, rain at times, good. White, Portland, Plymouth.
Now, subway systems from around the world. Will you need to tell us in which city it systems, please? Best of luck.
Okay, let's reveal our 5 subway systems, and here they come. We have got that made you think Paris.
This is brilliant.
City from Andy and Judith. 50. David and Rachel are going to say. Is it going to be 15 though? It's absolutely at 7. Very well done indeed.
Too nice to make this into so many films and what have you, isn't it? Now, A is London.
Chink of light getting inside the telescope. The astronauts had to get the latch to lock.
Houston, if you copy, Jeff just working, putting the doors back together and thinks he's managed to close the gap. And we're going to press on. If you've got a way to do it, do it.
Trap and a ratchet. Floating Story Musgrave improvised a solution. It was a success. The astronauts were elated.
So, you know, at the first sight, the intention is positive, right? These objects are really meant to help it. They are meant to make care more continuous, data-driven, safer. But he experienced those devices differently, because he experienced them as an intrusion. They enter his home, his routines change habits. They are invading his home, his independence. They impose rules and expectations on his everyday life. So this is exactly the point I would like you to notice. So from a functional perspective, this is gold standard in terms of interaction design, because you see, you have gamification, you have you know, a very careful design. I bet that most research projects, they don't reach this level of usability in terms of pure usability, right? But the missing link is the quality of experience. The quality of experience. When we design technologies for mental health care, we often focus on functionality. What the system can do, which type of data it collects, the type of feedback it provides, and the designers of Thomas' solution, they did this exercise and were very well. But adoption depends on something deeper. It depends on how technology is interpreted, what meaning it takes in the user's life, meaning. Whether it supports or threatens the person's sense of autonomy, dignity, and identity. And this points to the role of engagement. And we know that engagement is a very complex construct and process. Why? Because it includes initial adoption, sustained interaction, emotional involvement. Emotional involvement is very important to ensure long-term adoption. The perceived relevance. I have to consider this meaningful for my life. And this links to trust, integration into daily routines, and the sense that the intervention is actually helping me and not posing a burden on me. So, of course, different interventions may require different types of engagement. For example, some tools are designed for daily use, others are designed for brief or targeted moments, others may require a longer practice. So we have to avoid the naive view of engagement. More use is always better because we have to distinguish between different intervention types. And we know that there are barriers and facilitators to engagement. For example, common barriers include severe mental health symptoms. In yesterday's presentation by Professor Bucci, we have seen how difficult and challenging it is to design something for people suffering acute psychotic crisis, for example. Technical problems, of course, usability, lack of personalizations, but also poor fit with user life, and as I said, the difficulty integrating the intervention into daily routines. But we also, it's also possible to facilitate engagement when we support, for example, social connectedness, when we help people increase insight into their own health, when we give users a feeling of control on the solution. And also personalization is crucial. People engage more when contents feel understandable, but also culturally appropriate. And this is a big challenge. If we create a mobile mental app and we pretend the app is used worldwide, of course we have cultural problems, especially when it deals with mental health issues. So for me, the key point is that engagement is not a superficial marketing metric, but it should be considered part of the therapeutic mechanism. And we know that two important drivers contribute to engagement, which is usability and accessibility. Usability allows the tool to help people achieving their goals with effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction. And accessibility means something different. Sometimes these two terms are confounded. They are considered as synonyms, but they are not. Accessibility means that the tool can be reached and used by people with diverse needs. So different age, different levels of digital literacy, and so on. And this is especially important in mental health because people who may benefit most from digital tools, they are often those who face the greatest barriers. We have seen in previous presentations, stigma, vulnerability, low digital literacy, discomfort with technology, and so on. This study shows that usability is really the weak link in digital mental health. And we have also seen that usability is only one component of engagement. We have to differentiate between usability and user experience. We have seen in Thomas. They analyzed more than 13,000 user reviews from 106 mental health apps. But this study is interesting because instead of looking only at clinical trials or expert evaluations, they examined what users themselves reported about the applications. And the main finding is very clear. Poor usability was the most frequently reported weakness, and one of the main reasons why people stopped using this app. they complained about very practical problems, bugs, confusing navigation, poor interface design, lack of clear guidance, missing functions, and so on. So if a user suffers from mental health issues, he might be already anxious, depressed, overwhelmed, or cognitively fatigued. And if the app is confusing, unstable, or frustrating, technology is another burden rather than a source of support. And the pattern doesn't change too much if you look at other type of digital mental health intervention. For example, our team, we carried out a systematic review on the usability of virtual reality applications for older adults. We used the PRISMA guidelines. We included 25 experimental studies focusing on usability of VR systems. So the overall picture is not that bad. It's encouraging. Most VR systems were rated as moderately usable on the SUS scale, system usability scale, feasible, acceptable. But as you can see, several issues also remained. For example, interaction difficulties, limited realism, and so on. So the classic problems that we have in VR applications. But we have to be careful about this positive picture because there might be a positive bias in the available evidence. Why? Because the studies that we considered, they measure usability. Therefore, they are likely to be studied in which usability has already received some level of attention, some degree of attention during the design of the evaluation. So probably the picture is worse in other type of VR applications. So I don't think that these results can be generalized to all VR interventions. And to my experience, VR interventions suffer from severe usability and ergonomics problems. And this is one of the reasons why we do VR research in mental health since 30 years, and I don't see a wide adoption of this technology. Again, VR-based mental health interventions has been validated in a number of diseases, eating disorders, anxiety, we have exposure therapy, phobias, and so on. So the problem is the mismatch between the design of the intervention and the lived experience of the user. And therefore, I turned myself to design research. Well, design research is a young field. It emerged in the 1960s with a strong interest on how design process work, how problems are framed, how ideas are generated, how prototypes are tested, and so on. And this is one of the most influential model, the double diamond. Probably you are aware of this model. And I think this is a simple but powerful representation of a human-centered design. You can see that the model has 4 main phases. The first is to discover. This is a divergent phase in which we open the problem space, we gather information, observe users, identify needs, and so on. And in digital mental health, this may mean speaking with patients, caregivers, therapists. The second phase is define. Here we converge. We have to make sense of what we have learned and identify the design challenge. Once the design challenge is clearly identified, then we diverge again. We define different prototypes, different solutions. We test them in order to identify the solution that works. And then we converge again in order to deliver the solution, test the solution iteratively, and eventually to start again the cycle until the solution provides an optimal user experience. Of course, there are different human-centered design approach. It's not a single approach. It's a family of methods. For example, user-centered design focus more on practical usability. User experience design incorporates usability, but goes also deeper because it focuses on what the user feels like using the tool, what it feels like using the tool. So the Thomas case is not a case of problems of usability, it's a problem of experience. Design thinking is useful when the problem is still unclear. And for example, you have to identify new ideas, new solution. And also participatory design and co-design are very important. Participatory design means that we give users a real voice in the design process, but this should not be confounded with co-design. So in participatory design, they are involved in shaping the direction of the project. They define priorities, the language, ethical concerns, and so on. But in co-design, they sit at the table with us. They provide guidance and feedback and ideas. So co-design is much more challenging than participatory design. But are human-centered design approach reported in DMH development? Well, according to recent reviews, not always. Out of 30 included studies in this review, only 22 mentioned a human-centered design approach or specific design methods. And in this case, the most frequently reported approach was participatory design. So this means that in many e-mental health projects, these elements are not clearly reported, but I think they should. I think that when we report results of a new project, there should be specific space for describing the design approach. We were discussing yesterday with Professor Butch about this, the lack of space that often we find in journals for reporting the design approach, but it's very important. To conclude, what is the difference between usability and user experience? Well, the difference tells Donald Orman himself, because he is the father of the concept of usability-based design, ergonomic design, and so on. We have seen in yesterday's presentation by Professor Barresi, he has been a pioneer of this approach. But he himself, he realized that focusing on usability is not enough. Focusing only on function, effectiveness and efficacy of function is not enough. We have also to consider user experience. And user experience is a multidimensional concept that encompasses not only the sensory and cognitive and affective, but also motivational aspect and social aspects. So to conclude, this is the workflow of a UX design approach. Unfortunately, my time is over, so I have no time to dive deep into these different phases. But I would like to share a last message, which is please, in your next project or your current project, keep an eye on the user, speak with the user, but not only the final user. Speak with the stakeholders, the therapists, the clinicians, meet them, talk with them, invite them at the design table. I know that this costs a lot of time, a lot of effort, but the result long-term will be very rewarding, not only for you, but also for our community at large. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Gajoli, for reminding us the importance of engaging the users and stakeholders in deciding the digital mental health tools. Yeah, and yeah, I think it's very important. I think the video reminds me because in Hong Kong, a lot of health insurance company, they kind of give us discount if you can walk 10,000 steps per day on average. And then my wife used a mobile shaking machine to achieve that.
No, we are human beings, so we are not chicken.
Yeah, I know. Thank you, thank you. Now, because of the time, I need to monitor, so we have maybe one question on site or online. But actually, Professor Gajoli will be here today and tomorrow. You can talk to him. Yeah, so highly recommend you to join the networking section. Any questions? Okay, Professor Gajoli, you highlighted the engagement paradox in digital mental health, showing that real-world app retention drop-offs dramatically. My short question, how can we design system to distinguish between bad attrition, where a user quits due to frustration or boredom, and good attrition, where users stop opening the app simply because they feel better or have successfully learned the self-care skill? I think this is a very good question. Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I think this is a very good question. But I should start my presentation again. So I think this is the main message I want to give. We have to involve the users in the process. We have to involve them in the design of the solution. We have to test and retest with them the solution, but also to evolve our methodological approaches to test the system. For example, the system usability scale is a very very frequently used scale. It's a standard scale in usability studies, but is used at the end of the use of the device. For example, after one session of use, and this is not enough, we should develop longitudinal observational methods. We should have a larger sample of users. You know, it's very costly. It's very expensive. Usability studies, usually they involve 3 or 4 participants when usability studies are carried out. But then, you know, there are also specific return of investment estimates. I have no time today to share this data with you, but it's possible to calculate the return of investment when you invest on usability methods and usability sampling, usability testing, compared with how much you lose in terms of economic value if you don't do this step. And this is just for usability. User experience is even more expensive and difficult, but it's even more rewarding. So you will not find a successful application that has not undergone an extensive user experience trial. And of course, you need a big budget to do this type of job, but also the involvement of the right competencies. We need to involve designers in the process. We need to involve technology developers, you know, clinicians, medical doctors, psychotherapists, but also researchers, but also designers. And they have a cost, but we have to include these costs in the budget. I have seen no budget in a grant, including a budget for designers. Probably in the more evolved projects, yes, but not in user research and development projects. Because they say, okay, design, we leave design after the clinical evidence. You know, when we industrialize the product, then we include the design. It's too late.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree. Actually, we have practitioners, technical companies, and maybe researchers and PhD students here. I think this is very good advice on that. And
we teach design to PhD students, for example.
Yeah. And also,
the solution.
And so also to our colleagues too. I think it's very important to train the staff to have that mindset as well when they design the research, especially using digital tools, no matter mental health or health. And also we need to, you know, to provide training to maybe the funding agencies.
Yeah,
they need to understand that is very, very expensive to develop this one that can be usable. Yeah. Otherwise, we will just develop something that are useless or maybe just can be used for a short while. Yeah. Thank you.